Chapter 10. No, Isabella said, the word barely audible, a plea against reality itself. No, this isn't possible. The rain seemed to pick up intensity, as if nature was trying to wash away what she had witnessed. Human. Then the wolf. Then the human again. Werewolf. The word she'd jokingly used with her informant was now a reality, lying bloodied and unconscious before her. Nathan's wild claims, impossible just minutes ago, now stood validated by irrefutable evidence. Isabella's world tilted on its axis, recalibrating around this new, impossible reality. Werewolves weren't metaphors or movie monsters. They were real. And one of the most powerful men in Atlanta was one of them. The charity galas, the business empire, the philanthropic foundations, all a cover for something ancient and primal. The envelope in her hand suddenly felt inconsequential compared to the evidence of her own eyes. She holstered her gun and knelt beside the injured man, the injured werewolf. Her fingers trembled slightly as she reached out to check for a pulse, half expecting her hand to pass through him like a hallucination. The concrete soaked through the knees of her pants, cold and gritty against her skin. Mikhail's skin was solid, real, hot to the touch, despite the cool rain. His fever heat was startling against her rain-chilled fingers. The blood seeping from his wounds was undeniably real, staining her fingers crimson. Up close, the injuries were even more severe than she'd thought. Deep lacerations across his torso and flank that would require extensive stitching. The rain washed over the wounds continuously, carrying away blood immediately replaced by more from within. The bleeding was severe, particularly from a set of deep claw marks across his abdomen and flank. Without medical attention, he would die here, in this dirty alley. And he'd been injured protecting her. Isabella pulled out her phone, thumb hovering over the emergency call button. Her phone's screen was beaded with raindrops, distorting the display, as uncertain as her path forward. Then she hesitated. What would she tell paramedics? What would happen to him in a hospital? Would they discover he wasn't human? Would that put him at risk or put the hospital staff at risk? What if he transformed again while in care? Think, Isabella, she told herself, her voice the only sound in the silent alley. Think. Mikhail Volkov, the man whose hotel towers dominated the skyline, whose charitable foundation funded half the city's arts programs. She'd seen him at the charity gala. He'd been charming, powerful, surrounded by Atlanta's elite. And he was this, a creature of myth. She remembered the champagne glasses catching the light, his perfect posture, the way other guests deferred to him without seeming to realize they were doing it. Had they known? How many knew? As the rain began to slow, Isabella reached a decision. She put away her phone and instead shrugged off her jacket, using it to cover Mikhail's nakedness. The expensive tailored blazer, a splurge she justified as necessary for courtroom presence, looked absurdly inadequate draped across his powerful frame. The fabric immediately darkened with blood and water where it touched his wounds. Then she gently turned him onto his back. His features were even more striking in unconsciousness. High cheekbones, strong jaw, aristocratic nose, stripped of the practiced charm he wore in public. His dark hair, plastered to his forehead by rain and blood, contrasted sharply with the pallor of his skin. "Mr. Volkov," she said firmly, tapping his face with the precise pressure she'd learned in first aid training. Raindrops struck his face, running over her fingers as she tried to rouse him. "Mikhail, can you hear me?" His eyelids fluttered, then opened. For a moment, those eyes still held the amber glow of the wolf, wild and feral. Then they cleared, becoming the grey-blue she remembered from the charity gala. The transition was fascinating, a visual representation of his dual nature. The rain caught in his eyelashes, individual droplets clinging like tiny crystals before falling away. Recognition flickered across his face, followed by something like resignation. Unsurprisingly, he remembered her and knew exactly who she was and what she'd witnessed. "Miss Santos," he murmured, his voice rough with pain, but still carrying that slight accent, that cultured precision. His lips were pale, nearly blue with blood loss, working to form words with a visible effort. "I suppose explanations are in order." "Later," Isabella said, surprising herself with the steadiness of her tone. The shock wasn't gone, but it had crystallized into a sharp clarity of purpose. The emerging dawn lightened the sky above them, turning from black to deep purple at the horizon. "You've lost a lot of blood. I need to get you out of here." A faint, pained smile touched his lips. "That would be appreciated." The words were formal, almost courtly, incongruous with his bloodied, naked state. His breath hitched with pain as he tried to move, a small grunt escaping before he could suppress it. "Can you walk?" "With assistance, perhaps." He attempted to sit up, his face contorting with the effort. Muscles rippled beneath his skin as he moved, powerful despite injury. Water ran in rivulets down his chest. "Though I find myself at a disadvantage regarding attire. Despite everything, the impossibility, the danger, the blood still seeping from his wounds, Isabella found herself fighting an inappropriate urge to laugh. The absurdity of social niceties in this context was almost too much. Even half dead and completely naked, Mikhail Volkov maintained his aristocratic dignity. "My jacket should cover the essentials," she said, helping him to a sitting position. The dawn light was stronger now, revealing details the darkness had hidden. The true extent of his injuries, the pallor of his skin where it wasn't stained with blood, the exhaustion in his eyes. "My car isn't far. Can you make it that far?" Mikhail nodded, though his complexion had grown alarmingly pale. Sweat beaded on his forehead despite the cool morning air, the classic sign of shock setting in. His skin burned hot against hers where she supported him, unnaturally fevered. "I've survived worse. Though I must warn you, helping me makes you a target." "The russet wolf." "Gideon, Victor's enforcer." Mikhail grimaced as he attempted to stand, leaning heavily on Isabella. His body radiated heat like a furnace, far above normal human temperature. Where he pressed against her side, the rain on her clothes began to steam slightly. "He'll report what he saw. That you helped me." Isabella thought of the calculating look in the russet wolf's eyes when it had considered attacking her. The cold intelligence that had assessed her as potential prey. A shiver ran through her that had nothing to do with the pre-dawn chill or her rain-soaked clothes. "I was already a target," she said quietly, wrapping her arm around his waist to support his weight. His skin was fever hot against her arm, his muscles taut with the effort of standing. "Let's get you out of here before he brings reinforcements." "A wise assessment." Mikhail stumbled, nearly pulling them both down before regaining his balance. His jaw clenched against what must have been extraordinary pain, the muscle twitching visibly beneath the skin. Water dripped from their bodies, creating a trail behind them as they moved. I apologize for the inconvenience. Near-death experiences are always inconvenient, Isabella replied, adjusting her grip on his waist to support his weight better. The solid mass of him pressed against her side was undeniably real. Warm flesh, slick blood, the tang of sweat, and something wilder, muskier. His scent was distinctive, not quite human, carrying notes of forest and wild places beneath the metallic smell of blood, especially when they involved discovering an entirely new species. Not a new species, Mikhail corrected, breath labored as they slowed down the alley. His movements were careful, measured, and each step cost him. The dawn light caught in the droplets falling from his hair, creating momentary prisms. Same species, different form. He paused, swallowing hard, Adam's apple bobbing in his throat. Though I understand the shock. Save your strength, Isabella said, letting her voice slip into the gentler tones she used with traumatized witnesses. Their progress was painfully slow, each step accompanied by the quiet splash of puddles and Mikhail's carefully controlled breathing. Explanations can wait until you're not bleeding out. As the rising sun cast long shadows across the abandoned Pullman yard, Isabella Santos helped Mikhail to his feet, supporting his weight as they made their slow, painful way toward her car. The envelope containing Nathan's evidence was rolled up and tucked in her pocket. Still, the most compelling proof leaned heavily against her shoulder, his borrowed jacket not doing much to preserve his modesty. The rain had stopped, leaving the world washed clean in the golden light of early morning. Steam rose from warm surfaces as the sun touched them, creating a dreamlike quality to the scene. Puddles reflected the brightening sky, turning concrete into mirrors. Birds had begun their morning songs, the natural world continuing its rhythms despite the upheaval of human understanding. Werewolves were real. They walked among the people of Atlanta, hidden in plain sight behind wealth and power and carefully cultivated normalcy. And now Isabella was irrevocably entangled in their world. The dawn light revealed smears of blood marking their path, a trail leading from reality into another, with no way back for either of them. The crimson streaks stood stark against the rain-washed concrete, already beginning to dry in the morning sun, turning from bright red to rust brown with exposure to air. I hope you have a good upholstery cleaner, Mikhail murmured as they approached her sedan. Despite his injuries, a ghost of wry humor colored his words. His breathing was labored, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool morning air. Isabella shook her head, unlocking the car with her free hand. The electronic chirp sounded incongruously normal after the night's impossibilities. Leather seats. Something tells me this isn't your first time bleeding in a vehicle. You'd be surprised how often it happens. The ghost of a smile touched his lips as she helped him into the passenger seat, his movements stiff with pain. The leather creaked beneath his weight, water and blood immediately soaking into the upholstery. Though, usually, I have clothes to change into. As Isabella closed the passenger door and circled to the driver's side, she fought the vertigo of a reality completely upended. Water dripped from her clothes as she moved, her saturated blouse clinging uncomfortably to her skin. 12 hours ago, she'd been a prosecutor pursuing a murderer. Now she was aiding and abetting a werewolf? Shapeshifter? whatever the correct term was for the injured man bleeding onto her car seats. Her hands were steady as she started the engine, muscle memory taking over where conscious thought failed. The familiar sounds, the engine turning over, the fan starting to blow air through the vents, the soft ding of the seatbelt warning seemed surreal in their normalcy. The courtroom had taught her to function under pressure and maintain composure when everything fell apart. But those skills had never been tested like this. "Where to?" she asked, as she pulled away from the curb, glancing in a rearview mirror for pursuers. The early morning streets were mostly empty, and the city was not fully awake. Morning mist clung to low places, vehicle headlights cutting through the haze with eerie beauty. Hospital seems unwise, given the circumstances. Her voice had taken on the brisk efficiency she used when interviewing key witnesses, focused, direct, emotions carefully contained. Mikhail leaned back against the headrest, eyes closing briefly with pain. His breathing was shallow, controlled. A man familiar with managing pain. Droplets of water ran from his hair down his neck, disappearing beneath the inadequate cover of her jacket. "Peachtree and 14th. Penthouse. Private elevator. Security will recognize me and not stop us." Even like this? Isabella gestured vaguely at his bloodied, nearly naked state. Sunlight caught the droplets in her hair, creating momentary rainbows in her peripheral vision. Despite his weakened state, he opened his eyes, meeting hers with unexpected intensity. The blue of his irises seemed more vivid in the morning light, rimmed with a hint of amber that suggested the wolf lurking beneath the surface. "They're like me, Miss Santos. They'll recognize me in any form." Isabella nodded, putting the car in drive. The vehicle moved smoothly through the early morning streets, wipers clearing the windshield's last rain. Her legal mind was already cataloguing implications. A community of these beings, an infrastructure to support them, others who shared this impossible biology. As she navigated the early morning streets of Atlanta, the sun continued its ascent, a new day dawning on a world that had always existed, but that she was only now beginning to see. After several minutes of silence, Mikhail asked softly, "Why are you helping me?" His gaze was fixed on her profile, studying her with unnerving intensity despite his weakened state. The sunlight through the windshield illuminated his face in soft gold, highlighting his dramatic features while deepening the shadows under his eyes. Isabella considered the question as she waited at a red light, watching the city come to life around them. Ordinary people began their ordinary days, oblivious to the extraordinary reality she'd witnessed. A woman walked her dog, a jogger waited to cross, and a barista flipped the sign from closed to open in a cafe window. Normal life continued, unaware of the parallel reality that had existed alongside it all along. "I'm still figuring that out," she answered honestly, her knuckles white on the steering wheel. The leather was smooth beneath her grip, warmed by her hands despite the chill of her rain-soaked skin. "But I think it's because whatever you are, you protected me back there. And because I need answers more than I need to run." She met his gaze briefly. "I've spent my career pursuing truth. I'm not about to stop now, even if that truth is inconvenient." Mikhail nodded slightly, his eyes drifting closed again. A faint smile touched his lips, revealing a glimpse of the charm that must serve him well in his human world. In the growing daylight, his pallor was more pronounced, the blood loss evident in the blue-tinged quality of his lips. Fair enough. Answers you'll have, once I'm not actively dying. That's the plan, Isabella said, accelerating as the light changed. The morning sun slanted through the buildings, creating stark contrast of light and shadow across the dashboard. Try to stay conscious until we get there. I draw the line at carrying you through the lobby, bare-assed naked. The hint of dry humour was as much for herself as for him. A thread of normalcy to cling to in a world turned upside down. A faint chuckle escaped him, followed by a wince of pain. I'll do my best to accommodate. His voice was growing weaker, his breathing more laboured, where his body pressed against the leather seat. Dark stains spread slowly outward, a testament to the severity of his wounds. As they drove through the awakening city, Isabella glanced at her unexpected passenger. This powerful man rendered vulnerable, this predator now dependent on her help.